Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Wednesday, December 7th, 2022, and today I'm bringing you a conversation with one of the most interesting entrepreneurs, I think, in Metro Detroit. Let's just jump into it. Friends, we're here at Ferndale Project in, Ferndale, Michigan, of all places, and I'm catching up with an old friend of the show, Dayne Bartscht, who is the chief cook and bottle washer of what has grown into an amazing operation. Now, last time we talked, we were recording the show in a shipping container.
Yep, that was a while ago. A lot has changed since then.
When we first talked, you were doing things in Eastern Market, and then you picked up the deal with Axel Brewing Company. And now, what's the size of the empire? In fact, there's a new thing in Royal Oak, too.
Yeah, so we now have 3 breweries. We actually also have a coffee shop and donut shop in downtown Detroit. So a lot kind of came out of that time period. I think we talked prior to the pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. So we hadn't actually opened Ferndale Project yet. We were just working on that, and then the pandemic hit and things got wild.
But it seems like you did well in rolling with the punches about things being wild.
Yeah, I remember talking a lot when the pandemic first hit. A lot of people reached out to us to do interviews because we had just opened 2 weeks before the pandemic, and they were worried about us. And honestly, everyone was worried about their businesses at the time. But I think one thing we had going for us was that we had just worked our tails off to get Ferndale Project open. The pandemic hit. We weren't set in our ways. And so we were just like, all right, we're going to keep working really hard and we're going to figure this thing out. So last time we talked, I think we had 15 employees. And then when we opened Ferndale Project, we tripled to 45 employees. 2 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And for me, the big thing was I just hired all these people. Like, let's find a way to make this work and not just resort to immediately laying everyone off. And I think kind of like that baseline foundation understanding of the fact that we were going to try to find a way to make this work, or we weren't and we were going to close, led to a lot of this growth and a lot of excitement over the last few years.
Well, the reality is that constraints breed creativity.
And we were very creative, I will say that, doing things that didn't work out and things that did. So the thing that really carried us through the pandemic is we used our self-distribution infrastructure. So we're the largest self-distributing brewery in Michigan, which means we deliver our own product. We run all the logistics. We have vehicles. We have drivers. And because we had that when the pandemic hit, we could pivot very quickly into home deliveries. So for that first year of the pandemic, we were delivering beer directly to people's homes. And that's really what carried us through 2020 and kind of where we are now. You mentioned our third brewery. We took over the former Roke space in Royal Oak, and that was really just because we ran out of warehouse space. So when we started doing home deliveries, all of a sudden everything was operating out of Ferndale Project, and at the time the governor had a shutdown order, so we couldn't be open inside, so this space just became an office basically. And then when it came time to start to open back up, we couldn't be an office anymore and we needed additional space. And so the Royal Oak tap room that we have is called Lincoln Tap. It's only about 9 minutes from here, which is really nice, and we run all of our logistics out of that space now.
Well, there's logistics, but also it kind of cuts some new ground in that it's a self-serve tap setup, right?
Yeah, so we started brewing a year ago in the Royal Oak facility. It's really nice because we have a 30-barrel brew house. Here in Ferndale, we have a 10-barrel, and when we started Eastern Market, we have a 5-barrel brew house. So we have way more production. It's the first time in the history of our business where we actually have room to grow instead of just constantly brewing at capacity. So we've been doing that for a year, and the community in Royal Oak was really pushing for us to open the tap room, but we just had so much going on that we just kept pushing it out further and further. And then there's issues around labor shortages in the industry as a whole and really the world as a whole. So just kind of thinking through that, we're like, let's hold off on this tap room. The space was pretty small. So there's an existing tap room that Roke had that's a small space. And then earlier this year, we got word that self-serve legislation was going to pass and they were going to allow self-serve tap rooms and bars and restaurants. And so we jumped on that and ended up as the first person to open with that new legislation and have a fully self-service tap room.
I'm going to get to that in a second. For listeners who don't know, what does the 5-barrel, explain that for me.
Yeah, for sure. So keg that you'd see at like your college party back in the day, that's a half barrel. So a barrel of beer is 2 kegs. So essentially our first brew house is 5 barrels. So we could make essentially 10 kegs at a time, which is really not much. Ferndale here, the former Axel facility, has a 10-barrel brew house, so we could make 20 kegs at a time. So going up to 30 was a huge step increase. But the other thing that's great is it's a 16,000 square foot warehouse. So we have fermenters everywhere, and we have space to grow and add additional fermenters. We can make a whole lot of beer there, which is really cool and different for us. Usually we're brewing at capacity and trying to figure out how to become more efficient. Now we actually have room to grow.
And brewing a whole lot of beer is what's in the cards for you, because one of the reasons I decided to come out here, now I've been out here for other things, to meet friends and whatever, but to come out here in a professional, wearing my podcaster hat is whatever that means, is that you have a crowdfunding campaign that's come together because you want to brew more beer, I assume.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So we just celebrated 5 years that since we opened Eastern Market Brewing Company, and the last 5 years have been fun and wild, but they've also been a lot of chaos, and that's been driven through the pandemic. So we purposely opened Ferndale Project. We didn't anticipate a pandemic, and then since then we've just been pivoting and innovating and growing. So as I started thinking ahead of the next 5 years, I'm like, what do we want to do? What do we want to look like? Instead of opening new things, we want to take advantage of the space that we have. So I keep mentioning that we have actually space to brew more beer. That's new for us. We also are growing in self-distribution. So we're the only brewery that self-distributes in Meijer, Kroger, and Busch's, which is huge. So we just got into Kroger next year. So there's all these things that we can do with the existing spaces we had. And we started thinking about how to fund those and what those could look like, and started talking to some private investors. And as we talked more and more, we realized that we wanted to open this equity campaign up to anybody. So we launched that 2 weeks ago, and it's been crazy. I was hoping we could get 250K. We set a goal of $1 million. And we're 13 days in, and just literally as I was walking over here, hit 500K. So 500K in 2 weeks. And so I think we'll be able to close out this series round by Christmas and raise $1 million, which is awesome for our business and helps us kind of pursue some of these opportunities.
So listeners, if you want in, you need to act now.
Yeah, I've been it was funny. I was talking to my partners on the way in today, and we've been very casual with family and friends and kind of sending the opportunity to them. But now there's a little more urgency where I'm like, hey, cousin, if you actually do want in, it's going to close before the end of the year. So we're starting to realize there's a little more urgency in making sure that people that want to invest get word.
So what sets your set of businesses apart? Because there have been so many brew houses over the time, and so many places open, they close. I don't want to get into a specific thing of someone else, but for you, what are some of the things that you have found that resonate for the work that you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, you and I were talking about this off the recording a little bit earlier, but it's just so interesting in the market that we're in, where there's so much craft beer, and above all, you have to have a good product. I mean, that's really been our focus. Quite truthfully, when we opened Eastern Market Brewing Company, our product was not good. It took a year for us to really figure out what we were doing and start making good beer. And as our beer got better, so did our business, and we started to expand. And I think early days when our product wasn't great, we had a really loyal customer base because of the experience we created in our tap rooms, but that alone didn't help us grow. So you kind of have to have the product and the marketing and the experience. Well, I also realized at the time that having a single tap room isn't a sustainable business model. Looking back on it, I would love to just operate a single tap room and have a small staff and resonate with fans, but it's really hard to go through the lulls of winter, and you just can't scale at that. So when we opened Ferndale Project, that second location, I think kind of set the foundation for us. And then things just spiraled, and now we have 3 tap rooms and a coffee shop, a donut shop, and we roast our own coffee. And so now it's all right, let's pull this back. So I mean, above all, you have to have a good product. Our brewers are amazing, our roaster's amazing on the coffee, and that's something we stand behind. Even the food at Ferndale Project, I mean, I'm really proud of all the products we put out. There's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into them and just passion from all the team members. But you can have a really good product, and you got to figure out how to market it. And so over the last few years, I think we've learned a lot about that. We have an in-house design team that does all our labels and really resonates with our consumers. And as you pull that all together, then you also have to have that customer experience. So you have to make sure that when you show up at one of our locations, it's memorable. You're going to share it with friends. You're going to come back. And I think those are kind of the 3 pillars of our business that have helped us succeed.
What was the biggest challenge being that small?
Man, it's just everything is so important. You can't do anything wrong. As a small business owner, things are out of your control. So all of a sudden you'll lose power. I mean, that's something that happens here at Ferndale a lot just because of how many trees are around. We'll lose power. And when you're that small, that could break your business. Being able to have multiple locations is great because if something happens at one, you kind of focus your attention to the other. But that's why I definitely feel for small business owners, and especially during the pandemic, is everything was out of our control at that time. And these little things are so impactful. And, you follow someone on social media and you see on Halloween, someone threw a brick through our window at Eastern Market, which when it was just that tap room, that would have been a huge deal for us. But, we got down there, we got it covered, we got the window fixed, and we moved on. But things like that happen, and it actually has a huge impact on your business.
Well, I've talked to a lot of small business owners and larger business owners over the years. And when I talk to them, there is this sense that if they expand, that they're going to lose some control, or they're going to lose who they are. Yeah. And from my experience, because I also wear the small business hat, you can do nothing on your own, and you have to kind of let some things go and trust people.
Yeah, we think and talk about that a lot. I mean, my biggest concern with opening multiple tap rooms was not feeling like a chain. And it's really important to me that each of our spaces has its own identity. And I think if you came from out of state and you visited one of our tap rooms and then went to another one and then went to the third one and you weren't told, you would have no idea that they were run by the same company because they're all so different. So Ferndale Project, where we're right now, I think it's very much situated in the Ferndale community. We think about these vibrant colors and just being part of like the fun atmosphere that Ferndale has. Eastern Market, we're in this old meatpacking facility and we've really embraced that. And then Lincoln Tap, we have a really cool new feature with the self-service that we don't have at our other locations, and that makes it unique. So that's something that I've really thought about, is like, how do we make each location unique and not feel like a chain and not lose our identity? And it's putting trust in your employees that are working at those locations. You know, things like, I'm looking around right now and I'm like, man, this patio is a mess right now and it needs to be cleaned up. But that's kind of who we are. Like, we'll get it cleaned up, and I'm not going to stress over it, and make sure that the staff take a look at it and make it right.
So when we're doing this interview here, I'm looking out at the patio on Livernois, and behind me is a giant set of coolers with some amazing looking beers. Now, I've tried a number of these beers. One of the things that I think that sets you apart from some other places is the marketing. Now, some people might bristle at that, but you look at every single one of these cans and it's collectible. Like, there's something special about that. How did that come to be?
I'd say like the first question we had to answer when we opened a Ferndale Project is, I get this question a lot, is why did you open a second brand, a second brewery? And for me, it was really important that it was unique, like I said earlier, to the Ferndale community. And that's why the name Ferndale Project was funny. It just came from the sense that we just kept calling it our Ferndale Project. And then when we couldn't come up with a name, we're like, let's just call it Ferndale Project. That's what we call it right now. But it speaks to the fact that we innovate here and we're always trying new things. And every one of our consumers likes us for different reasons. So we have people that just come for the liquid purely. You could put it in a blank can and they would be really excited about it. We also have consumers that come and collect art pieces of our labels and they put them up on their wall. And so the art's really important to them. And so it's finding ways to differentiate. We make so many different products, and you want to make sure that, you attract the right consumers for all of them. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is we're so focused on the craft of our product, and that flows through all the way to marketing. So we just had a meeting yesterday. We were talking about our releases for 2023. And we were talking about what makes each beer special. And if there's something that we can't find that makes it unique or special, then I don't want to put time or energy on that, because there's so much good beer out there, especially in the state of Michigan, that putting out a mediocre product or putting out even a good product that's not marketed well, you're just going to be another beer on the shelf. And so for us, just the extra thought going into each label is really important.
Well, I think about that even in the kind of work that I do. Like, there's media people who just rewrite the same article 14 times over, or make an article out of an Instagram post. Just going to share the Instagram post, man. Like, I'm just going to put it out there, because you got to put your work, especially, I mean, yes, you've scaled up a bit. Yes, you have more employees, but that doesn't mean that time is infinite.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we have like kind of come down from with the pandemic, is like, when it first hit, you're just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. You're like, I just need to generate enough revenue that I can make payroll in 2 weeks. And like so I'm like, okay, let's make Detroit style pizzas. Let's make vegan donuts.
I remember that.
Yeah, let's make biscuits out of spent grain. Let's make dog treats. So we were just doing everything. And funny enough, some of those things took off and have continued as a business for us, and a lot of them have not worked out, or we didn't put time and attention to them. And that's what I'm really focused on with the team as I think forward. And a big reason we're doing this investment round is, let's take the things that we have that we know can be successful, and let's invest time and resources into those. So it's the 80-20 rule, essentially. Like, let's spend 80% of our time and our investment on the things that we know will do well. And that's really beer and breweries. And we have these fun side projects that we'll continue to work on, but most of our emphasis is going to go into beer.
What surprised you the most of the things you tried that worked?
It's got to be Dooped Donut, our vegan donut brand. When we opened Ferndale Project, we had a pastry cook who was hired to do desserts. Pandemic hit, and I said, all right, guys, we're going to find a way to keep everybody on the team, but we got to get creative and think outside the box. And she started making vegan donuts, and every day they'd sell out. And it was shocking to me, but we'd have people come, and this is really speaks to the Ferndale community for coming out and supporting us. But that was our focus, and she started selling those to the point where we kept selling out, and now we have a donut shop downtown. We make them at scale at a Royal Oak location. That's been a crazy eye-opening situation.
All right, this $1 million, for this investment? What's it going to? Let's get to the nitty gritty.
There's three major intended uses of the funds. The first one is doubling down on self-distribution. So I mentioned earlier, we're the largest self-distributing brewery in Michigan. And for me, that's been really important. We can maintain quality, the same experiences we create in our tap rooms, that goes out to our retail partners as well. And so we own that supply chain, but we've never spent any money on marketing. And this is the first time where it's like, okay, let's actually think about how these big breweries operate. Let's think about how distributors operate that deliver their own beer. And let's think about what we want to promote and advertise. And there's infrastructure stuff like vehicles that we'll need to purchase. We'll have to hire more drivers as we continue to grow in that area of the business. But we've seen year over year growth in that business, and we project it to keep going. And so it's really investing in that. The second thing is our Lincoln Tap location. I mentioned it's a really small tap room. We have a kitchen there that's ready to go, but we're too busy. And if we're going to serve food, then people are going to lose out on their seats. And so we need to expand that tap room. The awesome thing is it's in our 16,000 square foot warehouse. So there's room to expand, but it's going to take investment and working with the city of Royal Oak to think about what that looks like. We also have a really small patio there, and our patio experience in Ferndale is something that people keep coming back for. So to be able to create a patio like that in Royal Oak would be awesome. And then the third thing is to kick off a project to expand our Eastern Market location. So the original location. This has been in the works since day one, and then we keep getting distracted and doing other things. But we have an awesome second floor event space. We have a rooftop that looks over the city. So it's going to take some major investment. We've started working on those architecture plans, and they should be ready pretty soon. So some of those funds will go to kicking off that project.
And if people want to know more,
yeah, so if you go to Mainvest, I think we're like pretty close to the top of the page right now. So we're actually the fastest. I just learned this. We're the fastest raised in the history of the platform, which is really cool. I think we're trending on that page. But if you go to Mainvest, MANVEST.com, and search for Eastern Market Brewing Company, our page will show up. Like I said, we just hit 500. The goal's $1 million, so we're about halfway there. Yeah, go check it out.
All right. Thanks, and it's good to catch up to you. Hopefully, it won't be so long next time.
Yeah, we should make this a regular affair, but it's good to see you. Yeah, thank you so much.
And we are done for today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Tomorrow, I'm going to be moderating a talk at the Mich Auto Summit, so I will need to focus on that. I am going to run one of my favorite conversations we've ever done on Daily Detroit. It's now more than 2 years old, but I think you should hear it because we got a lot of people who have joined us since back in that day, so I think you'll enjoy it. Anyway, I'm Jer Stays. Devin O'Reilly will join me on Friday to talk all things Detroit. So thank you for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and I'll see you around town.